Hello everybody and welcome to April. It's simply gorgeous out. Well, we're almost to the 1 year mark of tearing down the Colorado and Coyote Creek and starting the Colorado Front Range. And it's been quite a chore getting to where we're at right now. But last month I talked about lighting, and I said that I'd probably have a show on lighting next. Well, guess what? That's what this is about. But a little reflection on a year as well. In 1 year, we've torn down an entire layout and now have everything laid up to 12 feet left to finish the main line. But we had to take this little sidetrack on looking at lighting. And lighting is one of those things that just make or break sometimes a model railroad. And so I've been through the last 6-7 months looking at different products, different ideas, different things to kind of take a look at what would work best for my railroad. And that's the key here. It's my railroad and we have to find out what works best for it and its conditions. And I'll get into that as we go into the show. We all have to look at that from our own railroads, what condition is going to be best for it. Not the best product. All products are good, but sometimes the best product is not the best product for another layout. So I'm going to go over what I've learned and what I've discovered. Now, before we get started, I'm a microbiologist. I am not an electrical engineer nor an electrician. But like everybody in this hobby, we end up learning a lot of skills and a lot of different things that we never thought we would learn. And lighting is one of those things that I've had to learn. So come on in and let's show you what I've learned. Well, here we are inside. And first of all, I want to give kudos to a lot of help that Sean and John have done, especially John and my youngest son, Benjamin, who helped me out 2 weekends ago. We tore out we moved 11 of these can lights, and we tore out 8 of them, changing and the last thing to go away from the Colorado and Coyote Creek a year later. And I had to rewire some new circuits for this lighting. So take into account that the work that's gone into this. Anyway, the question becomes, what are the conditions of lighting for my layout? Well, these are the same conditions you're going to face with your layout as well. Probably the number one thing you're going to be affecting lighting your layout is the height of your table to the height of your ceiling. And that really comes into play quite a bit. In the case of my railroad here, my ceilings are 9 feet tall, and my railroad is between 4 and 5 feet tall. So that means that any light from the ceiling has to reach between 4 and 5 feet to get to the deck of my table. That's quite a bit. Now, if you have a double deck layout, you might only have to go from 12 to 24 inches. And that has a huge effect on the type of lights you can use. The other thing that comes into play is your table square like this one, or is it round, or is it odd shaped? In the case of my layout, I'm very odd shaped. My layout tracks around the whole room, and I have curves in my for my ends. I don't have any real sharp corners. Probably the sharpest corners, well, right here behind me. That's the sharpest corners in the entire layout. The rest of it is all curved. So that has an effect on what you want to do with it. Then you have, do you want to dim it? Now I like dimming my lights for night operations. I really would like to really get into maybe having it begin to get brighter from night and then have it go to an afternoon sun and then return back to dimmer and go to an evening light. That's what I'd like to do. So why don't I work in that direction? And that's something you need to take into effect. And then again, you get into night lighting. I like the effect, and I've seen it done and pulled off on a couple layouts where they use a really faint blue light to give a kind of like a blue moon glow. And I like that look on a layout. It makes it practical to still do operations, and it makes it at least give you the feeling of an evening. And so those are the things that I'm setting up for conditions for my layout. And there are things that you need to take a look at with yours. Now, the types of lighting. The incandescent bulb. I think it's a great invention. I'm sure there are many people who would think of the evils of it. But you know what? This bulb has served us for many, many years. And in model railroading, it works extremely well. One of these sockets and one of these, you can light just about any layout you want. And by the way, these are flexible because you can track around a round curve or something like that. They're inexpensive. These little sockets run about $1 a piece. And an incandescent bulb, my gosh, I think you can find them for 50 cents. Well, you used to. They're kind of fading away and going away. But it's not too bad. You still can use them. I know Joe Fugate on his Siskiyou line uses 40-watt bulbs. He's throwing a low throw, so he can use a dimmer to dim his lights down just bright enough to give him enough glow. The advantage of that is these things get hot, so by dimming them down that low, Joe doesn't seem to have too much of a problem with temperature. He admits that it does raise the room temperature maybe a degree or two, but it's nothing uncomfortable, he states. I had 75 watts in these can lights when I first built the Colorado and Coyote Creek. That's 22 lights in this room. And I'm telling you what, it was uncomfortable after about 5 hours or 4 hours. It started to really get very warm in here. And I switched to compact fluorescent lights. The advantage is these throw just about as much light and they're much cooler. And my meter didn't spin around quite so fast. Those are 3 good pluses right there. But for this layout, I've got about 200 feet of table face that I need to light up and put lighting into. If I were to do it in incandescent bulbs in these, I could probably do the whole project for less than $500. Maybe a little more depending on the type of dimmers and how many dimmers I might need to dim it. So that's not too bad. I could do them with compact fluorescent lights. It would be a little more. To be fair, these come for about $3.50, and if you use 100 of them at $3.50, well, you're going to spend $350 on bulbs, $100 on these. That's $4.50. Oh wait, I wanted to dim these. These ones don't dim. Not to fear, they do make these in a dimmer version. They're about $8. Well, I'm up to 800 plus the dimmer plus these sockets. Well, I'm up to $1,000. Not a bad option. Just not the perfect option, I don't think. So let's take a look at some other ones. LED strips. These are fantastic. Everybody likes them. Well, let me give you a little hint of how these work. They're a strip with copper going down them, with LEDs on them and resistors right on them. Now these are 12-volt resistors, or 12-volt strips. This is a 16-foot or 5-meter strip. It takes 72 watts to run this. Watts comes from volts divided by amps. So my transformer I need to do is 12 volts, and I'm going to divide it by 72, so I need a 6-amp transformer to run one strip. That's not too bad. Matter of fact, that's what this is. It uses about 1.2 amps of AC power to generate 12 volts, 5 amps of DC power. Seems pretty reasonable, doesn't it? These are fairly inexpensive. By the way, you need one for each strip. I calculated, based on my experiments and throwing light 5 feet, how many of these strips I would need to light up my table. It took 4 strips to throw enough light 5 feet to make it reasonable. That means that I have to take 200 divided by 16-foot strips. It'll take 12 of these strips one time around. Times 4. Actually, it's 12.5, but we'll just... That is 50 strips I need to light up this table. At that voltage, let's see here, times 72, I need 3,600 watts of transformer power to light up that table. A 1200 watt transformer, by the way, good luck on trying to find something bigger than that. I've searched. I'm sure they're out there. I haven't found one yet. But at 1200 watts, I need to spend about $300 per transformer, and I need 36. So I need 3 of those. That's 900. Oh, little thing to note about transformers. You probably want to run them between 70 and 80%. Because at 100% they get awfully warm, and you'll let the magic smoke out of them really fast if they run at that high temperature for a long time. So just be aware of that. That means I need 4 of them now. Wow, I'm up to $1,200. And then I have to find dimmers. They're about $200 a piece. And then the strips are $20 a piece. That's the cheapest part of the whole thing. So really, to light my table in LED strips was going to be over $3,000. But I hadn't given up on LEDs. I took a look at Michael Rose on Model Railroad Hobbyist blog. Kudos to him. His light strips he have there, they're a little circuit board. And man, they throw a ton of light. They're about 7 watts a piece. I'm getting pretty close to what these are. I would need less of them to run it, so I might be able to get away with 1 or 2 strips. It's bringing the price down some. Might be. But I looked online to see what it would cost for me to get those strips. For me to buy 200 of those, I was hitting pretty darn close to $3,000 by the time I added everything I needed. That's the same $3,000 I was looking at with the strips. So it's not really solving my problem very much. But I do like what he has there. And if you have a small layout with a long throw, that might be a real good solution. But if you have a second deck and a short throw, these would be a good solution too. By the way, when buying dimmers for transformers, make sure you get the dimmer that's appropriate for the transformer. You can't use standard dimmers. For instance, DC transformers that are magnetic transformers need to have magnetic style dimmers. That way they don't let the magic smoke out. Just a heads up on that. I didn't do that, I just learned about that. Well, I'm back to using fluorescent tubes again. But like I said, my table's not square. But I could use them. It's got long runs, and it is make it very feasible. And they are dimmable. And I took a look at looking at that whole situation. And again, the sockets that are dimmable for these, the fixtures that I would need for these, would cost me about $2,400. And then I'd have to buy the dimmers as well. Yeah, we're up to that $3,000 again. Boy, that seems to be the magic number, $3,000 for this 200 feet. Again, if you have a smaller railroad, these numbers really don't mean anything to you. But they do to me when I'm the one having to build it here. Well, that led me to kind of look at different options. I looked at LEDs, fluorescent tubes. They have them out, and they're dimmable as well. Yeah. Fixtures were about the same price as a regular fixture, and the bulbs were $20 a piece. I'm still getting close to that. It's less than $3,000, but not much. And then I still have to buy a dimmer, which I'm not exactly sure because after I hit that number, I really didn't come around. Once again, this incandescent bulb and this is looking like a real solution. It was about that time I was getting ready to just say, I guess that's what we're going to have to deal with. But of course, finding incandescent bulbs is becoming more tough. Until I found one of these. This is an A19 LED bulb. Now the neat thing about these bulbs is originally they came out, they were about 20 bucks. Of late, I've been able to find them for between $6 and $7 for the bulb, depending if they're warm white or cool white, even if I buy a large enough volume. Did I remind you I needed 100 of them? That'd be a large enough volume. So, if I do that, I'm looking at bulbs costing me, let's say, $600. I need 100 of these. That's about $1 a piece. I'm up to $700. A dimmer, and by the way, these are 11 watts apiece. So I need something that's going to be at least 1,200 watts or more in dimmer power. And you can't find those at the box stores that sell all the parts. You know, Home Depot, Lowe's. They get to 1,000. And by the way, read the sides of those, because a lot of them say you can only do 450 watts of LED bulbs. I had to go to a specialty store, an electrical store, to find something that I needed. I ended up getting a 1,500 watt dimmer. By the way, they do make 2,000 watt dimmers if you need those. But 1,500 watts was plenty big enough for what my needs were. And by using these, they're capable of rotating around and being flexible. And I can dim these using that dimmer. Now these dim based on pulse modulation, which happens to be the type of dimmer I have. Some things to be aware about that. Pulse modulation, well, let's do it this way. Most of us are familiar with AC and how that works, and it blinks when it's on AC. It's turning on and off 60 times in a second. We can't see that with the human eye. But I'd like to point out that when you dim these, you're taking it from 60 cycles to 30 cycles, or to 15 cycles, which dims the bulb. But we will notice the flickering. And so that comes into play. Our cameras will also pick this up as well. So when videoing with dim bulbs at, say, 15 cycles, you're going to definitely see a flicker on your camera. So just be aware of that. For me, it's not the most important thing. I do it, but I do videotape my trains. I'll just have to turn them all the way up to day or all the way down at night and just not have that in between. So it's a fair trade-off for me. By the way, something to be aware about these strips when working with AC or DC power. And by the way, you could use AC power to power these as well. With DC power, we all learned as kids, when we got our first train set, we put those 2 wires to the track and we ran it around the track, worked fine. And as time went on, we bought more track and got a bigger circle and a bigger circle and a bigger circle. And at one point, we had this huge circle that would go all the way around the room. And we'd hook up those 2 wires onto it. And as the train got to the back side of the room, she slowed down. And then as she came around the corner and began to get back in here, she picked back up speed again. That's what these things do too. The difference between the Chinese one and the American ones is the bus wires that are in this thing. They're not really wires, they're copper strips. They use a pretty thin copper strip. Well, with one of them, it's not a problem. It lights up, it works perfectly fine. You attach that second one to it. The LED closest to the power source is nice and bright, but as you get down a little farther, they begin to dim. You start adding on a 3rd or a 4th strip, you really are going to notice it. So just be aware of that. And again, you can use AC power as well, but that doesn't change the thickness of those wires. And that's something to take into account when doing these strips. So just think about that if you're using the strips. Anyway, so what I ended up using was the simple LED bulbs and these fittings. And I'm going to show you what they look like on the radio. No, I'm going to show them what they look like on the table. But I think it's clear to understand. These bulbs, the fluorescent bulbs, throw a ton of LEDs. These throw a lot of looms, a lot of looms out of these and out of these. Even these are now starting to throw a lot. Each one of the bulbs that I have on here are throwing 800 looms out. Every other feet, it's not bad. That means in the same 4-foot length, I'm getting as much or not more light than I am in the fluorescent tube. And the new LED tubes that you get that are T8 tubes, they can throw even more light. So really look at your options when you're looking at what you can do for lighting. In any case, enough for all this. Well, here we are at the layout, and as you can see, the balance is pretty tall. Mainly because John, being 6'5", me being 5'4", there's a huge difference here. And that really went into the design considerations when I was looking at this. This balance is 4 inches above John's head. So he can easily walk around in this area here, and it'll be going down here as well. And he can walk through there and not have to worry about hitting his head. For me, it's fine. I can see everything just fine. The layout is at a perfect height for me, and I don't have a problem with it. It just means that I have to take some considerations into here. One of the things is, of course, I'm going to have to raise the backdrop. That'll help block some of the lighting out. And as you'll see later when I show you the lit up with the vehicles and the cars all in here, it's a good balance and it's a good trade-off. And that's basically what we have to make a decision on the lighting. In any case, let me turn on the lighting and show you what it looks like with the lights on. Now right now my dimming capabilities are not in. Because I'm running about 100 lights, between 90 and 100 lights at 10 watts apiece, I need a 1,000 watt dimmer, at least a 1,000 watt dimmer. And actually I went for 1,500 because I want the additional space there just to be safe and to be conscious that when you use a dimmer, you generate heat. Now these, you can find 1,000 watt dimmers at Home Depot, but be careful because they're not always rated for 1,000 for everything that you're doing. I had to actually go to an electrical place to get a special one, and I had to order it. It's on its way, and I'll install that later on. But it's a big double box wide dimmer because of so many watts that it has to be able to dim. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. So right now I'm just flipping them on and off. In any case, let's take a look at the vehicles and the cars and everything and see how well the lighting looks as a whole. So there's your lighting. It looks pretty decent, you know, and it doesn't cast too bad of a shadow. The lights up above here will eventually be more reflective as I paint the insides the same blue color that I paint my skies. And that backdrop will raise up enough that it should be able to block out the lights. Now I purposely have blocked them out of the camera shot, but in a minute here I'll back up so you can see them. Now you can see I'm using a combination of cool white and warm white LED bulbs to give me a nice color balance into this. So I hope that helps you out. I hope it gives you some food for thought for what you want to do for lighting on your railroad. And most importantly, I hope you enjoyed this video. You guys take care and happy model railroading.